series of groups around modern methods of construction. And we had this procurement work kind of hanging off the edge of the brief, really, in case anybody got excited about it. I'll give you the story as it kind of unfolded, and what's immediately kind of interesting is how so much of this terrain is contested. Okay, the debate kind of ebbed and flowed between the technology kind of champions on the one hand and those people who were rather more kind of cautious and grounded on the other hand. And in fact, we went around the loop several times with the ebb and flow of the argument, and certainly we haven't closed it out. So this is an active space for sure. The debate about modern methods of construction started with a very bold statement about air tightness, and this was seen to be a crucial driver for modern methods of construction. You can apparently achieve air tightness much more successfully through modern methods of construction. And very quickly we got into a debate about the relative merits of air tightness vis-a-vis natural ventilation. We got into the debate that some of the other groups talked about the balance between new build on the one hand and retrofit on the other hand. And of course you can make all the new buildings completely airtight for the next 5 years, but that's rather a small impact in terms of the existing building stock. So there's always that kind of balance between the two sides of the equation. Very quickly we got into a discussion about, well, my provocation was, well, what exactly do we mean by modern methods of construction? Can somebody give me a kind of definition? And people told me about how this idea is related to off-site fabrication, related to the skin, the structure, kind of timber frames. And to what extent were people talking about these exact same things 25 years ago? And how does the debate differ now from how it was 25 years ago? Well, it differs, apparently, in terms of our accumulated knowledge of the unintended consequences of these sorts of technologies, these sorts of systems. There were new drivers for modern methods of construction that didn't exist 25 years ago. And the new drivers are about energy, are about indoor climate control, are about carbon footprint. The old drivers were about speed of construction, buildability, cost reduction. And we have a debate then about, well, okay, so to what extent have we accumulated knowledge of the unintended consequences of these ways of working, these systems, innovations, in terms of the new drivers? And are there different sorts of lessons to be learned? And so the debate went back again about dampness, about natural ventilation, about the law of diminishing kind of returns, but indeed about the performance of air tightness over time. There was a strong counter-argument that the trouble is people haven't taken the time to visit and understand the performance of buildings that exist now. And if they'd done that, they'd have a much better understanding about mechanical ventilation with heat recovery and about the contribution of these sorts of technologies in that space. But again, to what extent is there a research base there that's monitored the performance of these buildings over 25 years? Okay, lots of space there. So lots of research agendas about how the users relate to these innovations. And of course we had a broad interpretation of users. Are we talking about users now? Are we talking about users in 5 years' time? Are we talking about users in 20 years' time? Are we talking about users who aren't born yet? What exactly is the cohort of users for which we are designing? There's a debate here about the skills and the knowledge that are necessary for modern methods of construction. The more we build new build with MMC, the more we de-skill local communities in terms of traditional craft skills that are required to maintain existing property stock. And somebody talked about pre-1990 construction, in terms of the institutional barriers, in terms of the requirements of the fire regulations, the insurance regimes, the requirements of people who lend them money for traditional forms of construction. We talked about the need for culture change and cultural barriers to these new ways of thinking. But then, are we talking about cultural barriers, or are we talking about wise caution grounded in experience of previous unintended consequences to new ways of working? I'll try and bring it to a bit of a conclusion. There was a discussion here about long-term relationships, about upskilling the supply chain, obsession with capital cost vis-a-vis life cycle cost, the need for sharing risk with the supply chain rather than pushing the risk down. It's interesting, this is exactly the same sort of discussion that used to take place in terms of integrated teams, cost reduction, now takes place against modern methods of construction, against low carbon. In case the same debate, but the drivers can position slightly differently. And then somebody sat at the back and said, well, hang on a minute, what about kind of developing countries? For the Chartered Institute of Building, 20% of our membership is international. What about developing countries, different climates, emerging markets? Okay, we need to develop an expertise in the UK to serve these developing countries with different climatic conditions, emerging kind of markets. Come on, guys, you know, break out of your little Englander mentality. And this was seen to be a good thing to do because of the Institute's international agenda, but also it's important in terms of developing the expertise for UK PLC that can export knowledge-based services around these sorts of issues. And so there was a plea there not to get totally kind of obsessed with Little England, but also to be aware of the different sorts of challenges faced in different parts of the world, not only for altruistic reasons, but also